What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and it wouldn't be a New York Jets practice if we didn't have some dismay, right? With all of the attention on Justin Fields, all of the pandemonium that was caused by, well, ultimately ended up being a dislocated toe. You would imagine that Aaron Glenn canceled practice and we didn't pursue anything further, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. So I'm here to catch you guys up on all of the news, all of the highlights and lowlights from the second day of New York Jets training camp practice. And let's kick it off with some housekeeping, right? And then we'll get into Justin Fields and everything else here. But essentially, the overall theme is going to be the defense ruled the day and the undrafted free agents, not only just from last year, but some this year as well, kind of took center stage today. So in terms of housekeeping, roster moves, we moved on from our first undrafted free agent from this 2025 class while we ended up waiving linebacker Jared Bartlett, Cincinnati Bearcat. And we ended up replacing him with defensive back Tanner McAllister. I believe this is going to be a cornerback pickup. And he is a former Ohio State DB who has spent some time on a practice squad or two prior to being cut and being picked up by the Jets now. So that's all in terms of roster movement. Now, essentially, as we talked about with the themes of the day, elite defensive performances, plenty of standouts to talk about actually. So unlike yesterday, we're going to actually talk about the defense to kick things off today. And some minor notes, like Robbie Sable's a guy I really like catching up with around this time. I love the Jets X Factor articles that I see him put out. And then, of course, I try to stay tuned for any clips. But he's been around the game of football so long that he picks up on a lot of these things that, the clickbaity articles and stuff aren't going to touch base on, such as some of his call outs about the continuous attention to detail, the fundamentals, the drills that are being essentially put together during these practices, right? He called out a wide receiver blocking drill that put onus on where they needed to be at, positioning, all that kind of stuff, which seems like hasn't been a trend at really any practice for the most part over the last couple of regimes, which was nice to know. And then he also called out an offensive line drill where they were looking to flash hands late, not really giving away position, different things of that nature. So it's high level, but something that is intriguing. And I'll be curious with some of the innovation that's going to be at the forefront of Aaron Glenn under this regime. Will we see maybe a new drill of sorts get created out of the blue, kind of like with one of the running back coaches I really wanted to bring on in Deuce Staley before, and what he's been able to bring to the combine, for example. And then from a special teams perspective, we haven't heard much of them since the competition, and knowing that not only on the kicking unit, but a punting unit as well, we don't have a single player that has done anything in a regular season game or otherwise at the NFL level. So it was a rough day. Caden Davis and Harrison Mevis are going to be our kickers, and that's the competition I'll probably get a little bit more noise or fanfare, if you will. Multiple missed field goals from both of these guys, and my understanding is that Harrison Mevis, aka the thicker kicker, he may have had a slightly better day than Caden, but AG talked to this. It doesn't seem like it's at the top of his list in terms of things that need to be addressed or fixed, and simply boiled it down to we're going to address it, we're going to get back to coaching, and we're going to let this thing ride out for a little bit before we need to go into panic mode or anything. So I don't necessarily expect a kicker to be added in at any point here in like the next week or so, but let's say by that first week's preseason game, if we're still seeing a ton of struggle and news come out of that ilk, there's going to be a quick couple speed dials that get done by Darren Mooney and Aaron Glenn in order to course correct here. Now, defense, Brandon Stevens, this is a name that I really want to bring up because people are slaughtering him. Now, admittedly, the numbers statistically and stuff don't look great. It's also a talking point that the Ravens is a franchise that's generally been historically good at being able to develop up and find talent at the DB level. And so seeing Brandon Stephens being clearly the worst guy on a established Ravens unit isn't great, especially since they didn't necessarily want to keep him around. But also the reason for why he's struggling, right? Now, this is the point where I would give pushback on, because the way I look at it is you have this elite coaching staff specific to DBs at the very least, based on experience and coaching, that should be able to resolve most issues for these guys, right? Like if there's an ability to develop someone, you feel really good about that player being in this coaching staff's hands, right? It's no different than looking at the linebacker unit under Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich and Mike Rudenberg, right? So this is the way that the stance I'm taking on this with Brandon Stephens. Now, he has the size, he has the athleticism, he has the physical ability. It's not like he's a complete bum, which I've heard multiple people mentioning in the comments with him. But I think right now, if you look at him, he's not too far removed from what we're seeing with like Bryce Hall once he started having a confidence issue, right? He went from being this elite guy that couldn't get takeaways, which, by the way, isn't too dissimilar from Sauce Gardner, was having above average to elite coverage grades and performances, but couldn't turn the ball over. And so the Robert Saleh staff looked at Bryce Hall and said, we could probably look to improve on this, right? Even if we take a step back from a coverage standpoint, the fact that there would be a bit of fear in someone that can force some turnovers is something that is appealing to us, right? With Brandon Stephens, it feels like he's in on every play, which is the running theme you're going to keep hearing. He just can't happen. He's kind of suffering from a consistent streak of guys just making great plays on the ball, right? He's there. He's able to get in the way effectively, right? But he can't actually swat the ball away consistently, or he's not being able to at least even give himself a chance to make a play on the ball. And that's a problem, but something that feels like this team can help him bounce back on, or at least start to display for the first time. And he had a really good day today. Multiple great coverages versus Garrett Wilson, who it seems like, according to a lot of the reports, Garrett Wilson is being covered mostly by Brandon Stephens, which is intriguing to me. Now, I don't know if this is part of kind of what they envision with his development, and Sauce Gardner happens to just be traveling and trailing somebody else, which realistically isn't fair to anybody else on the roster, a Mason Taylor included, because you'd expect him to shut them down. But maybe this is kind of the plan, right? Let Brandon Stephens go against an elite wide receiver consistently during training camp. We'll try to iron out the kinks, and if he starts to look good against Garrett Wilson, you feel really good about him battling wide receiver 2 caliber players when Sauce Gardner actually starts traveling and trailing top weapons across the board. So if that's the plan, if that's the outlook for this, I'm all on board. And seeing that he's had a very strong day here versus him is huge. Plus, for what it's worth, Aaron Glenn did shout him out as still being really excited about him in the midst of a lot of fans, feeling the complete opposite. Quincy, Jamie, and Sherwood, they're still doing their usual explosiveness all over. Robbie Sable did highlight specifically Quincy and some of his coverage ability, which you could call as a little bit of a knock on his game so far. He called out a lot of, at least a play or two that he was able to make, which you wouldn't expect maybe an ordinary linebacker to be able to pull off, right? Forcing Justin Fields into a throw that's safe, but still kind of seeing the way he attacked it sounded like it was impressive. And then Andre Cisco, we know with this new defense, there's going to be more blitzing. There's going to be more opportunities just across the board with what we want to do. Andre Cisco, I believe, only has like a 1.5 sacks over his career so far, but it seemed like he had a really, really good day in that particular role. I believe it was the first play of team drills that was called out where he was able to force Justin Fields into what essentially would have been a sack, and I think he would have, it was mentioned like a half sack between him and Michael Clemens. But something to look forward to, right? Not only does he have takeaway ability, but if you can also add the dimension of him being able to go out there and create pressure as a pass rusher, that's a big opportunity, right? Because people are going to look to see that he's playing the field deep, right? And so if it's going to be last minute adjustments where he's looking to sneak up to the line of scrimmage, that could be a secret calling card for him this year. UDFA, Marcelino McCrary-Ball, I feel like maybe from 2 seasons ago now, he got himself an interception off of Brady Cook, who did not seem like he had a great day. In fact, one of the interesting things to me that Sabo called out as well was that so far throughout the entirety of, I guess, training camp and maybe going back to OTAs, it seems like he's had a issue overthrowing a lot of people, which is kind of good, kind of bad. Means that the arm power isn't ever going to be an issue for the most part, but that he's having some issues being able to determine maybe depth and being able to throw some of those finesse balls in there. Jarius Monroe, UDFA as well, one of my sneaky favorites that I liked when we picked him up. He also got an interception off of Brady Cook. And then flipping to the offense. So we know Justin Fields, right? All of the hoopla was him being carted off, very ambiguous details initially about it, and then we started getting some more finite information, or definitive information, I should say. Dislocated toe. The most recent injury updates that I saw outside of what I reported earlier was that he's going to be on a day-to-day timeline, which maybe is a little generous, right? Maybe more week to week, at least for like the first week or two. But seems like he may not have an issue with being able to be there for the first preseason game, to be determined if we actually end up rolling out starters and stuff like that. But still a blow, right? So he may miss, the next practice comes up Friday. We may not see him there, and then I would imagine the next one probably doesn't come up till that Monday or Tuesday, something like that. So maybe he ultimately only misses one practice, but again, it can't. If he's getting 30, 35 reps, whatever that looks like right now, and I think about that hour and a half they've been averaging so far, that's an hour and a half less time that he has to go out there and kind of work through a lot of these details, a lot of these issues that he's having, build that comfort level, build that trust with his teammates. So we'll see what ultimately ends up happening there. But even before the injury, it sounded like his day wasn't going too well. Started off again with that would-be sack between Andre Sisco and Michael Clemens. And then he also had a bad decision throw where he forced a pass to Arian Smith deep in double coverage when Garrett Wilson seemed like he also was open, according to kind of what I've checked out. But as Justin Fields exits, Tyrod Taylor comes in. And this is... I wanted to say that Aaron Glenn and company would have expected for this to happen, and maybe this is part of the pressure that they're hoping to see Justin Fields be able to thrive through and such. But having that veteran guy that already had a rapport with the team, already had the respect of a lot of these guys, and anytime you get that veteran label for a guy that's also been able to go out there and kind of win some games and stuff, that can cause issues for someone that's a little bit more on unstable footing. So he comes in with the veteran leadership. He gets shout outs from Brandon Stevens, Elijah Vera Tucker, Josh Reynolds, not only for just being able to or being willing and able to let it loose and attack the deep parts of the field and getting aggressive, but also just for leadership, right? Letting the guys know that we need to pick up the tempo in practice. We need to get better with the execution and stuff, and by all accords, it seemed like that definitely happened. And evidence of that would be a bomb or two that he was able to get off to Garrett Wilson. And then, of course, a good comeback route, I believe it was, to Brandon Smith, another undrafted free agent. So overall, lighter news, and I think that's just because everybody else was, beat reporters, etc., scrambling to get details out and try to be the first one to break news and all of this, different elements. Overall, it seemed like it still ended up being a solid enough practice. Justin Fields wasn't even necessarily a big distraction. And I dropped the short on this because I did think, by the way, and we'll kind of wrap it up with this, it was really weird that a couple players mentioned they didn't even know or were aware of kind of what was going on with Justin Fields, which indicates a problem to me. The quarterback should... just relatively speaking, the way the NFL functions, should always be at the forefront, of a lot of breaking news, right? And so I understand they're in the middle of practice and stuff, but with a cart coming out and all these things, it just seemed really odd to me. But that is the news from day 2 of training camp. Let me know what you guys think, if you were able to dig in and find any other nuggets, lowlights, highlights, etc. Feel free to drop them in the comments so we can all check out. And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.